Welcome to it, sports fans. 7:30 in South Africa, 6:30 if you're in the United Kingdom. Relevant today because we have a legendary guest, genuinely legendary guest, and he's joining us all the way from just outside Watford, and he'll be joining us. Wow, it's going to be incredible because he's doing great things and has done great things wherever he's been as a rugby player. I can't wait to get to him. But I am not alone. Welcome to it, a different ballgame. I am with Woude Muller. Woude, what's happening?
Hey, I am super happy. It's the 1st of July, which means it's my birthday month, and I love my birthday. So, yes, so be ready to get spammed with birthday stuff, especially with donating sanitary products for girls, because that I would like to do a drive with a very good friend of mine, Sivan Gacy. We'd like to do a drive for sanitary products for girls so we can go hand that out. It's a very big problem in South Africa, and hopefully we won't stop until sanitary products are free, just like they are in New Zealand, because it seems like the Cinda can do everything. Bring rugby back.
Great.
And give products for free.
Great message. Totally agree with that. Well, that is conscientious and birthday month. Wow. I like that. I like that. Hey, you can have your cake and eat it. So you can have a birthday month. I love it. I love it.
What else?
Absolutely
you
love it.
have to make it times amazing in this COVID time. So might as well celebrate the whole birthday month.
I'm not here to judge. Let's go with it. Let's go with it. And I tell you what, let's have a great show today. I cannot wait to get to our guest. And Woude's got something awesome that I'm really starting to enjoy, which we put together every Wednesday. Tell you a little bit about what we're talking about today. Huge boxing fan. This guy here. Remember going to the first great fight I ever went to. I went to do lots of boxing when I was younger. If you're not from South Africa, on this soil in South Africa, being a Xhosa man, you have two choices: rugby or boxing. My uncle is berserk about boxing. Took me to when Lennox Lewis famously lost to Hasim Rahman. I was at that fight, and I was a little bambino at that stage. But boxing runs in my family. They love it. So tonight, I'm going to tell you the mess that is happening at the top of heavyweight boxing, and mess in a positive sense. Positive/negative sense, depending which side of the fence you sit. I'll tell you who I think will win in the super fight coming up between Joshua and, of course, Tyson Fury. But I'll talk to you about a third element and possibly a fourth element within that landscape, which I cannot wait to see unfold. And then after that, we'll have the skip pass. Woude Muller is going to break it down. Who is the best number 13? To ever represent the green and gold, that is the Springboks in World Cup rugby. So that's what's coming up today. Great content. And I'll tell you what else is great is we got a guest coming on, electrifying. The word legend, overused. This guy's a legend. A genuine legend of rugby. There is no denying it. But we will get to that. Cannot wait. Let me get straight into it. Let's not muck about. Had a lovely day today. Another day. Great weather in Joburg, by the way. Awesome weather. Could have been a beach day. No beach here, but hypothetically. Terrific weather. I'm feeling good. But we're going to get straight into it. Let's get into the boxing. Listen, Eddie Hearn and the guys at Matchroom have done a quite sensational job to bring boxing back. But we now have a situation. Mauricio Suleiman and the WBC are in a situation. There was a bomb that dropped about 11th of June, I believe it was, that what will be commercially the biggest combat fight in the history of combat sport ever, economically, will take place sometime early next year. Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury have agreed in principle to go punch each other in the face for 12 rounds for 3 minutes at a time. I say that in jest because both. One is an Olympic boxer, calls himself the Gypsy King, and really is a maestro in the ring. Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury will meet for somewhere in excess of $250 million, which they'll split, probably Saudi Arabia. But there's another element to all of this. The WBC, as I said, Mauricio Suleiman, WBC, there is something called a mandatory position. Now, Dillian White has put himself in a position to be that mandatory position. Here's the problem. It's been like that for 18 months. It's been like that for 18 months. So actually, this is what the contention for the greatest boxer alive looks like. Now, people will say, where's Deontay Wilder? I just want to hold that screen. I want to tell you why. Deontay Wilder has been a bum from the beginning. He had heat in the right hand, right? We call it in boxing an equalizer. Vital in boxing, makes up for his technical deficiency. He only started boxing very, very late. No technique. And if you looked at his chicken legs, no wonder that he hasn't been knocked out earlier. Got little tiny little chicken legs. Tiny little chicken legs. Tyson Fury took care of that. So no, he's a bum. Stop telling me Deontay Wilder's a world-class fighter. It's nonsense. Great hype machine. Shouldn't have worn that costume. Way too heavy for his tiny little chicken legs. But he's not in this conversation. And I think what people don't understand, I'll start with the man on the left, Tyson Fury, probably produced the greatest modern day heavyweight performance by going away and defeating, not knocking him out, over 12 rounds in his home, although Russian born, in Germany, Vladimir Klitschko, that was his home. Tyson Fury went and decimated prime Vladimir Klitschko. Decimated him, took him apart over 12 rounds, and that was the greatest heavyweight performance. And people say, Muhammad Ali, that may have been the greatest heavyweight performance ever technically. They call it stick and move. The aim is to be hit and move. Not to be hit and move, excuse me. Tyson Fury that day was perfect for 12 rounds. Stick and move, stick and move, stick and move. World champion. Had his drug problems, moved on. So there was a fight with Deontay Wilder, the first one. Everybody said, oh, Fury lost by a mile. So I just want to explain, because I don't think a lot of people understand how boxing scoring works. It's what I've noticed. And there are journalists who I don't think understand how boxing scoring works. So I'm going to explain to you why Tyson Fury got robbed in the one tie that he's ever had. So in boxing, it works like this. Both boxers start each round with 10 points, right? So the most you can have is 120 points in a fight. Now, what happens is at that top level, very, very rarely do you lose a round by 2 points. So most rounds are 10-9 rounds. Because at that level, you're not getting absolutely obliterated. In order to lose 10-8, you have to be obliterated. Now, here's where you get a 10-8 round. If you get knocked out, by the way, if you get knocked out, what that means is that you immediately lose that round 10-8. If you get knocked out twice, you immediately lose that round 10-6. So let me tell you what happened in that fight. Deontay Wilder knocked out Tyson Fury twice. Now, a lot of people go, oh, but he knocked him out twice. Of course he should have won. Deontay Wilder should have won by a country mile. That's not how it works. Each round independently, Deontay Wilder won 2 rounds in that fight. The rounds where he got a knockout. So he had 2 10-8 rounds. The rest of them were 10-9 rounds in the favor of Tyson Fury. It's not even close. So let me laymanize it for you. Let's not get into the tens. Let's just do it in single digits, right? So let's say it's 4-0 with the rounds that Wilder won. Let's just call it 4-0 because he won by 2 points in both of those rounds. By the way, that leaves 10 rounds where Tyson Fury's got 10 points. So he beat him by 10. He beat him by 6 points if you want to just do it on a 10 scale. He beat him 10-4. And no, it's not okay. Because I know in the army they say 10-4. That means okay. It is not okay. He got robbed, right? Tyson Fury is the best technician around. Deontay Wilder is a bum. Let's go back to that picture and let me tell you why it's interesting. For our podcast audience, we have Tyson Fury on screen, Anthony Joshua, and the man in waiting. Now, Dillian White, for about 18 months, has been the WBC interim champion. So if you don't understand boxing at its height, in fact, boxing as we know it was built when it was run, and essentially the first superstar really is a guy called Rocky Marciano. It was built and run by the mafia in New York, and all it was for, just like cricket, it's a gambling sport. They kind of controlled who won, really, who lost. And that hasn't really changed much. They've just got names now to the syndicates. The WBC is a shambles. So what they want to do is make Tyson Fury what they call the Emeritus champion. And it's a mess because Bob Arum, who is arguably the leading promoter alive today, I think Eddie Hearn has taken over, but Bob Arum has that clout in America and, of course, has ESPN on his side, wants to make Tyson Fury the Emirates champion. Dillian Whyte says, no, I want to fight my mandatory, which is the rightful way. Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury is the biggest economic fight. Mauricio Solomon needs to give Dillian Whyte his payday. But because there's no rules in boxing, it's not like there's a FIFA or there's, an ICC who set the rules. In boxing, each organization sets their own rules for the belt. It's a mess. But ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at the three best, and the gentlemen on the two gentlemen on the left, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, will have the biggest fight in the world ever, economically. Probably in Saudi Arabia. Now, Dillian Whyte is a man who has beaten everybody inside the top 10, lost to Anthony Joshua, but otherwise has cleaned up everyone else. He's got Povetkin coming up next. Won't be easy. But it's a shambles that it's been 18 months that Dillian Whyte hasn't had a go, and they want to turn Tyson Fury into an Emirates champion. What does that mean? It means even if he were to lose to Dillian Whyte, they would not be fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. He'd just be fulfilling the mandatory. Because what he wants is to unify that the title and keep the belt because he wants to fight Anthony Joshua for all the marbles. It is so wrong. The Emirates champion is nonsense. Tyson Fury calls himself the lineal champion. It's nonsense. Stop all of that. Give the man his dues. Listen, give me the record there, Dave. I just want to give you all of these guys' records just so people can see what we're dealing with. Right? Tyson Fury has drawn one fight. It was a robbery. He's the WBC and Ring Magazine champion. That Ring Magazine belt means the world. Two-time unified champion of the world, Anthony Joshua, 24 fights. He lost that one fight, of course. And I think the problem for Joshua is he forgot that he was an Olympian. Against Andy Ruiz, Jarrell Miller, who's just been banned again for a banned substance, probably the end of his career. Big Baby is done. But Anthony Joshua replaced at a whim somebody who was terrible for his style. He lost to Andy Ruiz, some pudgy Mexican guy who doesn't belong in the ring with him. Olympic gold medalist. And Joshua that night forgot the fundamentals. He got rocked and never got up. That's his one loss, but he went to Saudi Arabia, stuck, and he moved and revenged it. The number one contender with one loss, Dillian Whyte, the number one contender in the WBC, Dillian Whyte. His one loss, Anthony Joshua. These are the three men we need to be looking to. Now, let me focus on the big fight. Fury Joshua. Who do I think wins? The better boxer, and it's not close, is Tyson Fury. It's a fighting family. His father is a master, a world-class trainer. His brother, his younger brother, terrific fighter himself. But Tyson Fury is the slickest, maybe the slickest heavyweight to ever live. Tremendous, tremendous movement. The head movement, almost like Floyd Mayweather. The feet, for a man his size, 6'8", 6'9", he's about 120 kilograms. Tremendous, tremendous technical work with his feet. He is everywhere. Tremendous body protection. Great rigid shoulder, leading shoulder, by the way. Makes him impossible to hit. Tremendous reach. And he showed against that bum, Deontay Wilder, that he can throw him. So the self-proclaimed Gypsy King is the best boxer in the world. But what he lacks is the equalizer. I think Anthony Joshua beats him because I think Joshua realized is I can still be an Olympian and do damage. Because when it comes down the pipes with Anthony Joshua, it is good night nurse. I don't care who you are. And he showed against Klitschko because he went to the mat and he got up that Joshua is tough. He's from the streets of Watford. So he's for real. Anthony Joshua is for real. I think it'll be tight. I don't think it goes 12 rounds because I don't think Anthony Joshua can win over 12 rounds. What that means is he'll gamble. And Tyson Fury on the way in will make you pay. But I think he's the one man. Anthony Joshua won't be outsized. He's the one man who can get to and equalize what is now a great. Tyson Fury is a great boxer. But I believe Joshua has the equalizer. He can level him. So in the big fight, I go with AJ. Purely because he's got the Olympic fundamentals. Tyson Fury couldn't put Wilder away when he'd rocked him. He was bleeding out of the ear, and he just couldn't put him away. He doesn't have that brutal power. Anthony Joshua's got that. He's got the Olympic fundamentals, gold medalist in London. Contentious decision, but he's a gold medalist. I believe Anthony Joshua will be the very first since Lennox Lewis to hold all the marbles, to be the true lineal champ. And once again, he will reign as the greatest alive. Is he the best boxer? No. He's probably the third, fourth best boxer, but the power's ferocious. Nigerian born, you know what those West African, or Nigerian heritage, and you know what that power's like. You've seen the physique of people from the west of Africa, and he has been phenomenal. Great pro, great role model, not into the role model stuff, whatever, but he is. He's just a fantastic pro. The amount of pressure he's under, great businessman. I think it's made for him. It's tailor-made for him to fulfill his destiny, he says. So for me, biggest fight in history, Anthony Joshua to win. Would love to know what people think. Gypsy King or AJ. But Mauricio Suleiman, you must, if boxing is to have its day in the sun, if it's right, scrap the Emirates champion nonsense. Scrap the Wilder rematch. I don't think Wilder will be ready this year. Mentally, I think Fury took his soul. Dillian White and Tyson Fury must get in the ring this year. AJ will come out on top, 2021. With that, let me hand you over to Woude Muller. She will discuss, of course, the best outside centers to ever represent the Springboks at the World Cup, the skip pass.
Yes, so like Mbolelo mentioned, we have been going through the Springbok World Cup wins, 95, 2007, and 2019, and we're busy picking basically our 15 best players in each position. Started with the fullback. I picked Percy Montgomery over Fenter, what's his name? Andre Joubert.
Joubert.
Oh my gosh. Over Andre Joubert. I've picked Cheslin Colby over JP Peterson, which is also one that Mbolelo disagreed with me on. I don't think you need a big guy anymore. I think Colby has proved to us that he is able to take on the big guys. This week we're picking our outside center. So looking at the three players in the respective World Cup wins, we have three men who played huge roles in helping the Boks win each World Cup, but they've also took the Boks to more successes in the time that they have played. We've got Yapi Mulder in 1995. He played 34 tests for South Africa over 7 years, obviously part of that in the non-professional era. He was a real powerhouse in the midfield. His strong tackling was probably his best asset. But I also think he falls out for me in this discussion because maybe I didn't watch him enough. And he also played for the Lions in that time that the Lions really didn't do very well. So the real question is between our 2007 and 2019 wins. Starting with Jacques Fourie. In general, your outside center is a little bit smaller than what your inside center can be. Not when it comes to this man. He is 190. He weighed 105 kilograms. He was quite an intimidating guy on the field with that huge physical presence of his. And I think he actually just got better with age. It would have been quite interesting to see what he would have done if he actually kept on playing, because he retired quite early in 2014 to go play in Japan. I would have liked to see what impact he really would have had and how much better he would have become. But even though he's huge, like I said, he's quite quick and agile and he could step. He had some real pace from the back foot and was great with ball in hand. He ran some fantastic lines. He made the game, just made it look easy, really. But besides being brilliant on attack, he was probably one of the best defenders to ever wear the number 13 jersey. Literally ever. But what really stood out to me with Jacques Fourie is his work off the ball. He was a master communicator and he was brilliant at organizing the defense of that Springbok team. And I really think that was his best asset in that team from the 2017 and in 2009 when they won the British and Irish Lions tour. Moving on to Lekanya 2019, the difference for me between Fourie and is that Jacques Fourie probably played his best rugby with Jean de Villiers on his inside, whereas doesn't necessarily need a partner, maybe because mostly Damien Delender is just not exactly a great partner to have on your inside, but I'll leave that there. But doesn't need a partner to do what he does. I really think he's gradually finding his feet. His defensive alignment is brilliant. You can almost say there's probably a cross between Mulder and Jacques Fourie, with just a little bit of touch of finesse with those beautiful runs and offloads of his. And I think he's starting to look more and more like those New Zealand kind of centers that they just constantly keep producing. Not a lot of flash, but there's an absolute all-round player. I think he's slowly but surely starting to understand all the weapons that he's got in his possession and how to use them. And I think it's just absolutely beautiful for me to watch his growth and see him develop into this amazing player that he becomes. I don't think we have seen the full force of just yet, though. I think he's still building himself into a world-class center, and there's definitely a strong case to be made for him to be picked as the best outside center in South Africa. But I do think he probably needs a little bit more time. Maybe if we have this discussion after the British and Irish Lions or after 2023 World Cup, might be a little bit different. But for me today, I think the number 13 jersey goes to Jacques Fourie. I don't think anyone will ever forget that try that he scored in 2009 against the British and Irish Lions when he ran along that right flank and he just literally ran people out of his way and scored that beautiful try. And as you can see here, he won the try of the year in 2009 with that specific try. So he's played 72 tests for the Springbok. He's scored 160 test points, 32 tries, which I think is the most by the Springbok midfielder, 98 Super Rugby caps, with a World Cup win and a British and Irish Lions win. So yes, his stats look absolutely amazing, absolutely incredible. But for me, I think it's mostly he's just this defense general. He's this classic outside center. When he has given the ball, he made something happen. And he was just this absolute majestic player. And I don't think right now anyone in South Africa can really be compared to him. And I don't think Mbolelo is going to disagree with me today on this one. Yes? No?
No, it's tough to argue that. I think he's he's a legend. You cannot argue what he's done. Probably the most complete outside back we've ever had. And I mean, I was at that game where he scored that try against the British Lions. He was a different animal. He was seriously a different animal. Jacques Fourie, huh? So you picking Fourie at outside center?
Yes, I do. So like I said, Lukhanyo, I definitely think he is gradually improving so much. He's really come out of his skull under Rusty. And the way he's been playing in the Super Rugby season, being captain is when he's really showing leadership skills. He's been a great captain at the Sharks. He's really been able to organize that back line from the Sharks, and they've been super, super good at attacking. But also defensively, like I said, his alignment on defense is just getting better. He's running much better lines. He's really turning into a complete player. He's just not there yet for me. So maybe my argument might change in a few years. Right now, you just can't argue that Jacques Fourie is just still the best one at the moment. And like I said, Jacques was very lucky to have Jean on his inside. Even Damien de Allende looked like a good player when he has Jean de Villiers on his inside. So, and that must be really hard work for someone. So having that player on your inside, obviously the two of them as a center pair, I mean, there's no one better in South Africa than that. So I think if can even get a better partner, a center partner, it will even help him more to be more brilliant than he already is. I think that could be one of his downfalls. They just haven't found that inside center yet. So once South Africa maybe gets that, hopefully not Damien de Allende, I'm just going to say it again, and I'm going to say it every single time. But yes, Jacques Fourie is my man.
So do you think Lukhanyo might be the perfect foil for because de Allende is one-dimensional, right? He does give you tremendous size. I mean, think whatever you will. Lukhanyo's quite a slick operator. You know, he's rare because he's a genuine playmaker at 13. Do you think is the perfect foil for de Allende?
No.
And the other one, and vice versa?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you need your inside center to kind of also create space for your outside center, unless your roles have to completely change in this situation. And has to be that person that does that for dear Linda. So Linda don't really want to talk about it now because I'm going to have to talk about him next week, but he can't take a ball into contact. What is the first thing that you learn as a rugby player is which hand are you supposed to carry the ball when you go into contact? You can't do that. He can't offload out of it. Yes, he had some brilliant moments, but it's just not enough. So I'm really hoping maybe Jesse Creel is a better fit at inside center between the two of them. But I think Andre Esterhuizen and Lukhanyo, the way that they've been playing together at the Sharks has been a really, really good combination. And that is working. Also, two big guys that are doing two very different things. You've got the guy at the pace outside. You've got the big guy on the inside who can take the ball into contact and create space. So I'm hoping rather that than the other way.
Interesting. So you're saying Esterhuizen, even though I have it on good authority that he is leaving these shores, are you saying bring him back for the British Lions series as the partner for Lukhanyo?
It's going to be very difficult to change your lineup and your team and your squad right now because we're not having a test series this year. We're not playing our July test series. We can't really try out new combinations. Not sure what's going to happen with the test of the end of the year yet. It's not confirmed what's going to happen. So it's a little bit difficult to really change that. So in the end, I guess it's probably going to have to be the Islanders. You're going to have to stick with what you know because we didn't have the opportunity to try new things. But for me, I would rather play Esterhuizen than Delenda.
Okay. Sounds like, but it does sound like it does sound like you are resigned to Delenda being there with Lukhanyo. So a little bit of honey with the medicine for you there. Lukhanyo being the honey for the medicine. That is interesting. Interesting. All right. Well, before the skip pass ends, let's see. We have a question from one of our listeners. The Drag King says, Bodie, not exactly on topic, but how was giving up the try for Mapimpi in the Rugby World Cup final?
You know, like I said, that try it's incredible. And if you keep rewatching it, it's really, really great. I think it's showing real leadership skills that maybe in that moment he thought he was going to get tackled. Mapimpi had a better chance and a better line to run. It just shows teamwork. And I think it shows from what I've said before that there was a really great, energy between all the players in that team. So for him giving up a try wasn't a big thing. Everyone was there for Springboks' success and they know what they wanted to achieve. So I think everyone was playing for each other. They weren't playing for themselves. And you could see that in that moment. Like, which is the best guy to really go score the try right now? You are. Let's go. Plus, really, honestly, Mapimpi put that kick through. So did he really start that try? Was it maybe his to take?
Fair's fair, Bodie says.
Yeah.
Okay, so the greatest Bok 13 to ever play in the World Cup, Jacques Fourie, huh?
Jacques Fourie, yes. So we've
Good
got
stuff.
Percy Montgomery, we've got Cheslin Colby, and we've got Jacques Fourie. So listen, next Wednesday when we are picking our inside center.
Our inside center, huh? The GOAT. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, the GOAT at 13. Outside back dynamo. Oh, he was special. Yeah. Jacques Fourie, as the Australians call him. Special player. Okay, very good, Vody. That is the skip pass for today. Super, super interesting. So join us next week, Wednesday. Vody will pick her number 12, the best World Cup number 12 inside center to ever wear the green and gold. Right, coming up, our guest knows a little bit about rugby. Might know a little bit about rugby. Might know a thing or two about rugby and the fly half position. Coming up in a little bit, our guest coming out of course, Yorkshire. Made in Yorkshire, perfected in England. Ladies and gentlemen, after this, our guest. Yes, that is our guest to come up. Let me introduce him and bring him in, a living legend, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing a man who has got his own tight 5 at home already, 5 kids at home. A Sale Sharks legend, a British and Irish Lion, a Saracens legend, an England legend. He has more records in his name than probably any English player in history. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only. Put down the tee, put the ball on it. It is through the poles. Charlie Hodgson.
Hello, how are you doing? That's a nice introduction.
I am great. Hey, Charlie, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem at all. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Hey, Charlie, you're sitting in your car. Is that because you've got 5 kids in that house ransacking things?
Yeah, you mentioned that there's a type 5. I hope they're not going to be a type 5 when they grow up. But yeah, I've got 5 kids. We went for a 4th and we were hit with twins at the end. So whether you could say I was lucky or not, I don't know. But yeah, it's all good. It's all good. 5-year-old boys to come at the end was is tough, but no, it's all good. I'm happy, and that's why I'm in the car.
All good.
I'm trying to escape, get some peace, and it's all good.
Hey, you're a professional, a consummate pro, I might even say.
Not sure about that.
Let's address something before we get going. You were born in Yorkshire, right? And then you played your rugby in Manchester. I mean, are you allowed back in Yorkshire? Because I know that rivalry is. What do they say when do you still go home?
Yeah, go home plenty of times. My parents and my brother and sister still live up that way, so always happy to get back when I can. But yeah, it was just the way things worked out for me at the time. Yorkshire, Carnegie, Leeds Tykes as they weren't really doing so well, and the only opportunity that I really had, to be honest, was at Sale Sharks. So to have the opportunity to play for them for 11 years was incredible. Loved my time there, and very fortunate that I had such fond memories from it.
Before we get into that career, I have it on good authority from a friend that we share, that there's quite a story to how you got your chance at the Sharks. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, I mean, I happened to be in the right place at the right time, actually. So even though I'd played England schoolboys as coming through school, so I think back in those days, the academies as they are now, there's certainly nothing in comparison. I mean, now you look 13, 14, 15 years older, there's a big pipeline of kids coming through. But for me, it was basically one man and his dog deciding whether you're good enough or not. So even though I played for England schools, there's no real opportunity for me. So I went off to Durham University. And it was during that first year that I was playing a representative match for Yorkshire. The scrum half that I was playing with in the same team, he was being watched, and I happened to have a good game at the same time. And off the back of that, I was invited to go over to Sale for pre-season training. Now, I thought at the time that it was purely just going to be a case of getting fit for my second year, third year at university, and just keep that contact with the club. But things went better than expected. I had a decision to make at the end of the summer and was offered a contract and never looked back. So August 2000, from being a student and getting drunk every few days of the week, playing a little bit of university rugby, I suddenly became a professional sportsman. So it all happened really, really quickly for me. It was when I look back, it was crazy time of probably 18 months, 2 years, because I went from being a student to being a professional rugby player to playing for England in the space of about 18 months. So it was ridiculous.
Wow. So you were from the nightclub to Twickenham in 18 months.
Yeah. Basically, I mean,
oh my goodness.
So, yeah, I signed my contract August 2000. Played my first professional game for Sale October 2000. November 2001, I was getting capped for England against Romania. So really, really steep trajectory. I look back and go, geez, I don't know how I managed. I probably didn't manage very well, but it was certainly a steep learning curve.
So, Charlie, I think something that may not come through, and there was some, I forget what this guy's name was, some Johnny guy, right? He was around, and yeah, we'll get to him a little bit later. Anyway, some guy called Johnny was around. I think that blanket has kind of covered I truly think statistically, let's take the emotion out of it. I don't want to put you in a position because I know you're a humble guy, but statistically, you may be the greatest number 10 to ever play in English Premiership history. Dave, won't you bring up these records of what Charlie's done? So, Charlie, I just want you may not look at this often, but you know that this is big J journalism. A genuine pro like myself scoured the internet all day. So, for our podcast audience, I'm going to read through a few records before I allow Charlie to have a look here and respond. So he's in the top 5 for appearances, 254, 286 being Wigglesworth at the record. So top 5 for that. Total points in Premiership rugby history. History. I don't mean this season or the season he retired. Ever. Since the St. George's flag was raised and you were playing underneath that flag in England, he's got the most points by almost 400 points in the history of the league. Listen to some of these names that he's got. He's got a better record than Ollie Barkley, Nick Evans, the great New Zealand player, Andy Goode, a tremendous fly half in his own right, an England representative. So this is not a joke. Next page, please. That is not the end of it, folks. Tries. I mean, of course, in the tries, he was a number 10, so you can leave that to guys like Van Dell. My goodness, the Jonah Lomu probably of English rugby. But conversions. There's a name at the top we recognize. Charlie Hodgson. Once again, Andy Goode's on that list. I think a promising one, George Ford, who's had a very good career. Nick Evans, ahead of that name. Andy Goode again. Steenson, a great player as well. At the top, no rival, Charlie Hodgson. Next slide, please. There's even more records. Penalties, 550, nearly 100 more than Goode. Drop goals, at the top of the list, tied with Andy Goode, ever. Charlie Hodgson. Charlie, what is your response to this? Do you ever think about this? Like, you had a your legendary status.
Do you know what? That legend word is very strong. I just see it as, well, one, it was my role, so that was what I did, and two, I'm old, so I played plenty of years. I managed to eke out a 16-year career, so I think it's only natural that in that position you just get opportunities every single week to do what you do. And yeah, I mean, will the record ever be broken? I don't know. And it's obviously nice to have. Like, it's a brilliant thing. I don't necessarily reflect on it too much. I have some very, very fond memories of my time playing, and I wouldn't necessarily say looking at the points is kind of those that would go, yeah, that's the reason why I did it. Because for me, it was about everything else. It was about everybody else in the team and succeeding with other people. And for me, those records that are individual, it's never been about that for me.
You see, I knew you were this humble. By the way, he's also the top point scorer for Sale Sharks in history. So, like, Charlie, I could keep going here in your greatness, but you're so humble, and I really, really appreciate that. And, you know, that length of playing is, I've said, you know, when it's all said and done, to take the emotion out of it, and you may or may not agree, I'd love to know what you think. Availability is the greatest ability. Your ability not to be injured, and this is the gladiator sport, Charlie, for you to survive. And it's not like you were carrying the water cans. You were player of the year 3 seasons in a row. Yeah,
I mean, maybe I did a good job of escaping contact. Maybe that was what it was. But, yeah, you know what? I think some of it is just down to a bit of luck. Some of it is down to actually being professional and looking after yourself. Certainly when you get to the end of your career, you need to think a lot more seriously about how you prepare for games, how you prepare for training, what needs to be done to get through it. And certainly with my time at Saracens at the end, it wasn't, my sort of playing time wasn't necessarily uniform from week to week, and it tended to go in blocks because I was shifting roles with Owen Farrell. So he'd probably play a batch of maybe 4 games with me on the bench, and then when he's away playing international rugby, that's when I slot in for 3 or 4 games as well. So it wasn't like I could build up any sort of resilience, any sort of tolerance to playing matches until it actually came to that moment. So that interim period of building up and getting the small opportunities, I still had to keep myself in the best shape I could. So I knew that I wouldn't break down when it came to those chances to play.
Phenomenal. And before we go into the Saracens thing, I'd like to go back to the Sale Sharks, because personally, I think the most electrifying rugby player or outside back that the North has produced in Jason Robinson, who was a teammate of yours for a long, long time. And we know he had his stuff off the field, and I admire people that come back from that sort of adversity. But what was it like to play with somebody of that level? And what was he like as a man?
Yeah, he was incredible. I think I was probably more shocked with the fact that I was in the same team as him. I'm from the North. I'm from the North, so I used to watch the rugby league as my in my former years, and Jason was playing for Wigan, so I saw him he's not that much older than me, but to watch him every single week for Wigan and having some unbelievable performances, of course, some unbelievable tries, to then for him to make that to convert over to rugby union, and then he's at Sale and I'm playing in the same team as him. There were times I was like, Jesus, is this really happening? And I think there are odd times, certainly in the early part of his career, when teams didn't really understand how good he was. Like, they kicked the ball over my head, and I was like, "This is brilliant. This guy's electric. He's gonna cause absolute chaos." And he did, probably for the best part of 2 or 3 years. Defenses just didn't know how to cope with him. And I think obviously defenses now have become much stronger. So rather than defending one-on-one, he's then got 3 players on him trying to get him down. But in those early years, it was just amazing. You didn't really have to work back because you knew the ball would just be brought back to you and he'd make a break easily. And it was fantastic to be in the same team as him. And as a bloke, you mentioned obviously the adversity that he had and the sort of experiences that he had as when he was much younger, and that was his days at Wigan. Just a good guy to be around. Always entertaining. Always enjoyed being with the lads. He was actually a bit of a freak when it came to his athletic ability. Like one of these annoying people that could basically look at a weight and then get unbelievably athletic and powerful and strong. When it came to testing at the start of the year, he wouldn't even warm up. He'd just put 140, 150 Ks on the bench press and just smash it out for one, and with no warm up, and walk away, and that was it. And that just really little frustrating little bits like that when you see.
Sickening.
Yeah, sickening, really.
Sickening.
I'm
sickening.
My bollocks off, and I'm rubbish. But yeah, it was all good. It was good.
And I mean, that time was, we were starting to see a sort of a filtering of the South coming up north, right? I think in your time at Sale, you had some tremendous players. One player I liked in particular, my only real question about this guy was, where did he buy shorts that fitted over his thighs? Because Luke McAllister, number one, did you guys have to cut T-shirts out to fit over each of his legs, number one? And what was he like to play and have it at inside centre? I think it was one season where you guys overlapped.
Yeah. I mean, ridiculous size legs. I've never seen anything like it.
Unbelievable.
And yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, we did overlap. And actually, Luke is an unbelievable player, an unbelievably talented player. And I think when he came to the Premiership, I would say, I mean, it's easy to comment from the North, but I think it's a little bit of a different game to what you see in the Southern Hemisphere in Super Rugby, because one, the weather's terrible. At times it is terrible. So then you have to start thinking a bit more strategically about where you play. So there are times when it's raining, it's ridiculous, it's a horrible night on a Friday night in Manchester, and we're stuck underneath our post, and I've got Luke outside me going, give me the ball, we're going to run it. I'm like, Jesus, I need to hold him back somehow. So it was, to have him there was just incredible, because he could do some things which I've never seen before. I've never seen from other people in that position. But he just needed to be held back at times, and it was quite hard. But yeah, it was incredible.
And do you think he got a fair rap from the media? Because a figure like him, where he is a lightning rod. I mean, what was he like behind the scenes? We as the public almost got a little bit of a, for lack of a better term, I think, more interested in being a celebrity than a player. But what was he like within the change room? Because he's such an interesting figure.
Yeah, he couldn't have been further from it, actually. He was actually really a nice, quiet bloke. He was never going to be the centre of attention in the changing rooms. He didn't go searching for the limelight when he was over here in the UK. Kept himself to himself, lived in a little flat in a little suburb outside Manchester, and that was his thing. And it's really interesting, this portrayal of him from what you see from the outside, but couldn't be further from it.
Wow, that's you see, this is why I think we live in such a great time where players can control the narrative more than the olden days, where whatever the media says is the truth. It's great that we can hear from guys like yourself who rubbed shoulders with these guys, and hopefully it changes things for him, because we now know you can transition from the field and you can make money off it. So I hope for Luke that kind of taint, it doesn't go with him, because from what you're saying, sounds like a great guy, and that's amazing, because an incredible rugby talent.
Yeah, of course.
And when you went to and you went to Saracens. So let's move over to that. What was that like? And, that was basically like, it was all, did that feel like being an Englishman playing at a South African team at a stage? Had that influx started when you were there?
Yeah, it had already started. So they were probably about 18 months into that journey, into that revolution. They changed everything over. Brendan Venter, Edward Griffiths were in charge, and they brought in these, what at the time were probably unknown players: Ernst Schubert, even Scott Brits, Justin Melk, Jacques Berger from Namibia. I mean, these guys, they weren't household names here in the UK. Of course, you guys would have heard much more about them. But geez, they were incredible people to be in the squad with them. They were brilliant rugby players, but brilliant people and brilliant men to be in the team with you. And so yeah, there was definitely the South African influx, but it was a good thing. It was a brilliant thing to start that revolution off for the way Saracens have moved on. It needed that experience from playing at high level, and it needed people who were willing to just put their bodies on the line and work incredibly hard. And those guys did that in spades, and it rubbed off on everybody else. And I think when Neil de Kock as well, I've not even mentioned him. He's one of my good friends. So when you've got these guys who are sort of leading the way and leading the charge of what should and shouldn't be happening, it's very easy for the young guys to follow. And you look at the academy that came through then at Saracens, likes of Owen Farrell and George Cruz, Jamie George, Jackson Ray, Will Fraser. These guys were rubbing shoulders with those senior South African players. And that for me was a massive, massive part of why the club has become so successful.
And of course, they've had their troubles with whatever they've had troubles with at the moment. Something that I've wondered about salary caps, right? And I don't understand it, because for me I think what it might do is crystallize the powers that were. Now, in your time, the dominant era, of course, were the Leicester Tigers, and the team that essentially, the core that drove that incredible English era, which we'll get to. But if we impose these limitations economically on teams that are trying to come up, especially in a sport like rugby, where it's still a burgeoning sport worldwide in my eyes. Do you think salary caps are something that should be in, or do you think we should just let the billionaires play like they do in France?
It's a really difficult one to answer, actually, because you can see the benefit in both. I don't think rugby here in the UK has as much commercial value as obviously football does, and even cricket to a point. So, of course, if these billionaires want to lose their money, then that's fine. But at the same time, if you're trying to make a level playing field, then let's do that, and let's set a cap on it and see how we can grow the game in that sense. Even if you look at the teams that are sat in the championship below, you wouldn't say there are many teams there that actually want to be promoted, because they just can't afford it. So
sure,
there has to be a point where you go, do you know what? Enough is enough, and let's just see how the land lies. And France have shown that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you've still got to get something else right. You can't just throw money at a problem and expect it to work. So there are other ways of getting the best out of people without having to just pay them money.
And this is a great point. And I know you've moved into that sector of life. I cannot wait to talk about that. But I just want to keep it on the field for a little bit. When you were at Saracens, had you ever heard that this name Mario Itoje? Because I find him to be an electric figure as well. Was he in and around the academy? Was anybody talking about him just as you were kind of at Saracens mentoring the younger players, the Farrells, etc.? Had you heard Mario Itoje at all?
So Maro, we'd heard a little bit about him through his school, but not a huge amount. He joined us as an 18-year-old. He left Harrow. He come to us as his first year as an academy player. But what struck me was just his unbelievable strength in the gym. And he was doing chin-ups with like 50, 60 kilo even, I think it was a 70-kilo dumbbell. I'm going, geez, this guy's 18 years old. I can only dream of doing something.
That's my body weight. That is my body weight.
Yeah, I mean, it was just incredible to watch this as an 18-year-old going, wow, who is this kid? And it's not just about strength, is it? But it was his work ethic. You could see it on the field when he was out. He was always in the ear of the skills coach and Joe, and he would spend time together just throwing balls at each other, and he'd just be learning and learning and learning, and he would be thrown in straight away. He was obviously in the first team very quickly, but you could see from the very start that his progression will be quick.
Wow. And, you know, I've heard lots of talks about him potentially captaining the Lions next year, being the next England captain, etc. What do you think about him moving out of the lock position and maybe being in the loose forwards? Because I've been reading some interesting articles, one from the great Ian McGeechan. So Ian McGeechan saying he feels like Itoje is trapped in the tight five. You'd want to have his dynamism to be able to break off the side, both on defense and then he could maybe be at 8 to attack. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, because he is, like you said, a physical, a dominator, and then the skills are unbelievable.
I'm not sure. I think the fact that he can do those things in the second row, it frees up another player to be as explosive and as dynamic in the back row as well. So he manages to get away with it because he is so athletic, and he seems to get himself all over the field. So I don't see it being a massive problem that he is in the second row at the moment. Talking about future captaincy, I don't know whether that's him either. I think he's quite quiet by nature and doesn't say a great deal, but leads by action, not necessarily by what he says. So I don't know how that will transfer into the captaincy role, whether that's for the Lions or England. But I think regardless of whether he is or he isn't, he's certainly somebody that you want on your team, because he like I said, he leads by example, and he's just incredible to be in the team with and also to watch.
That's amazing. So just on the club scene, I'd love you to tell me at the moment, how do you reflect on those days, both with, obviously with the Saracens, but with the Sharks? I mean, what they did for your life, and how do you reflect on that? What sort of memories do you have of just playing club rugby in the Premier League?
Do you know the best memories you have? Of course, you do it to. For me, I obviously did it to win, and obviously wanted to win trophies. But at the same time, I also realised that you were never going to win a trophy every single year that you played, and of course, it ends in a little bit of disappointment if you don't quite make it. But the memories that we made just from day to day, from the friendships that were formed both at Sale and at Saracens, lifelong friendships which I hold very dear, and like to some of the South African guys who are back there now are living in Cape Town. I obviously won't get to see them as much as I did every day, but those sorts of friendships, they will last a lifetime, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can always hook up again and have a good chat about what's going on and what was. So those are the best bits for me, is those friendships, and also the experiences that we had together, whether that was winning or whether that was losing. And that's something that you'll never ever be able to replace, but the bits that I really enjoyed.
That's awesome. I mean, the essence really of rugby, when you whittle it down, is let's go and battle it out. We'll both bleed, and at the end of the day, let's go and share something cold together. I think that's kind of message I'm getting from you, and that's awesome, because not everybody has that type of reflection, right?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, maybe I'm fortunate because I did actually manage to win a few trophies along the way, so I can kind of look at both sides and go, well, this is great, but this is great. And actually, when you compare the two, I'll never take away those actual days of winning the trophy, but then they're gone, and they're memories, and they're like brilliant days and brilliant nights, or brilliant 3 nights. But it's kind of like the journey of getting there. It's like we talked a lot about Saracens, about making memories of, well, we obviously want to win the trophy, but each day that we're in training, let's make sure it's a good day that we're there, and let's make sure we get the best out of it. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's work hard whilst we're here. Let's try and develop ourselves, develop our friendships, and see where we go. And that, for me, is much more important, because that's going to last a lot longer.
Fair enough, Charlie. And it's, I'll tell you what, while you're at it, why don't you go get the most points in the history of the competition? That always makes it a little bit more fun, I imagine. But we're transitioning now, and you were talking about winning. Now, in the North, I don't think there's a competition for this era under some gentleman named Sir Clive Woodward, right? He started out, nobody was happy because he was, from what we saw, I may be wrong, you can correct me, he ran it with an iron fist, but he had a plan. And what was it like under this great coach early on? And then, of course, getting to to sort of that 2003, which you were tragically injured for that, and another World Cup. But what was it like to be under Sir Clive Woodward?
It's really interesting you say you have this perception that it was an iron fist. Actually, it wasn't really that. He just put lots of things in. He put lots of things in place for people to develop. And if you look at the state of that squad that he had leaders everywhere. He didn't need to tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing. He just involved them in everything they did. Martin Johnson, Lawrence Dallaglio, Neil Back, Richard Hill, Johnny Wilkinson, Matt Dawson, Will Greenwood. You can keep going. They had so many international caps, both individually and together. So for me, it was, from Clive's point of view, it was about how do I get the best out of these people? How do I put things in place so they can go off and do their thing when they're on the field? And that, for me, was the real strength of what Clive brought. He had a really good coaching group, and the playing group, he kept them together for a long period of time, and they were brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, he was an interesting figure. And once again, you see, we get that from the media, but I remember reading the interesting things because he went on to work at Southampton and do some really interesting things. Clearly a cerebral man, and wonderful to hear that you're saying he was actually letting the team lead. And, you know, you said you went from the nightclub to Twickenham in 18 months. Now, what was that like? Because I would imagine going from that, and then you're with Martin Johnson, Richard Hill, Neil Back, maybe the most ripped human being ever to live. Neil Back, 1% body fat, by the way. Now you go from, we're going to enjoy rugby, I'm 20, yay, I've got a contract, to we do this for a living, and we want to win a World Cup. What was that like for a 21-year-old Charlie Hodgson?
It was a shock to the system. I don't think Jono even spoke to me. I don't think Jono spoke to me for the first 12 months of me being in the England squad. There's a definite hierarchy, and I think it took me a little bit of time to break into that, of what that was all about. But it was very clear that they had this journey that they wanted to go on to win that World Cup in 2003. They'd obviously had disappointment in '99, and it was Yannick de Beer. Was it Yannick de Beer hitting a load of drop goals against them? So
yeah, hey, sorry about that. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, no, yeah. But I think the fact that they went through that disappointment together, they were on this journey again to put things right and to take them forward, and that sort of machine just motored on, and I sort of fell into that. It wasn't like I was ever part of that journey at the beginning, so it took a while for me to really get up to speed with what it's all about and who does what, and get to know people, because it was very settled. So it was a hard team to break into. I mean, you mentioned Johnny before. Johnny, he was and is a legend of the game, and for me to try and knock him out of his position, for me to start any international matches was ridiculously hard in the first place.
And what was it about him that, because I mean, you could do everything clearly, but what was it about him that made him so special? Because there was another guy, some Daniel guy in New Zealand. We don't want to talk about him, but for a long time it was those two. What was it about him? Just seeing him every day. What did he do that little bit extra that put him over the edge?
Oh, for the first thing, he trained longer than everybody else did. I mean, there were times when we'd be doing some kicking practice at the end of the training, and I'd kind of done my bit, and then I'd be looking over thinking, is he going to finish yet? Because I'm done. And yet he'd stay out for probably another hour and a half at times. Just his work ethic was incredible. I think for me, he left no stone unturned when it came to his game. Like, he thought about it all the time. And I think at the same time, we were different players. For me, he was very strong defensively, and obviously goal kicking wise at the highest level was unbelievably brilliant at it. And I think for me, perhaps where my defence wasn't strong, I completely admit that. For my attack was probably a much stronger part of my game and stronger than Johnny. So we were just different players. And I think even looking at the game now, and as it was, it's defences that are going to win your games first and foremost. And Johnny had his name nailed to that team because he was so strong in that area.
He was. Oh, he was a thumper. He was. I remember him tackling Daniel Vickerman, Australian lock, and Vickerman had to go off the field because he'd hit him so hard in the thigh that he literally had to go off. Or Johnny Wilkinson, I mean, twice his size, but Wilkinson, a thumper, and that's so interesting to hear. Go ahead.
Yeah, his timing was impeccable. Just for somebody who wasn't that big, he just knew how to get that shot right every single time. And of course, he obviously came off worse at times because he had his issues with his shoulder, and his neck. But the majority of the time when he got that right, I mean, he's smashed some blokes who were way bigger than he was.
Now, the interesting part for me becomes, getting closer to that sort of, because he came to South Africa and broke our hearts. I think he was 18 in that game when they beat us here, and we could see, there's trouble coming there. But now I think by 2002, it was kind of clear that this was a legendary group because, like you said, that back three in Delalio, Hill, and Back, that was established, right? Then Johnson, K, I think that was established. You had Leonard up front. Thompson, I think we were starting to see that this was some serious stuff. What was it about Martin Johnson where all of these figures, Greenwood, I mean, another, I could just keep going with these names. They were now legends by 2001, 2002. They were it was clear that they were all becoming sort of transcending the game in their own right. What was it about Johnson that he could keep them all centered to go, right, your egos, because naturally being that great, there must be an element of an ego and self-belief in order to reach that. But what was it about Johnson that the players could believe that, all right, no matter what, we will sacrifice and get around this man? Was it that way, or was it more of a Woodward and Johnson thing? But how were they leading that ship, and was it Johnson himself?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, just by purely his size, his physical size, he had presence within the team. So, and also he wasn't necessarily a man of many words. So actually, when he did speak, people listened to him. And he was very, very well respected that people would listen to him. And of course, he and Clive will have run that ship very, 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 very well together. And there were times when we got on the field and certainly in training sessions where he didn't really need to say a great deal, but he'd say 2 or 3 things and everybody around him would just be straight on it and they would listen. And that's just the sign of him, I think. I don't know whether he did anything differently to perhaps what somebody else would do, but he commanded that respect, which, like you say, with all those egos that are floating around. But I think at the same time, he understood them. They all had this common goal. They all wanted to achieve the same thing. And I think he was very good at sort of pulling people in line and getting people to do the right thing.
Now, I remember reading an article and watching actually, I don't know whether it was a documentary or just some clips, just how committed that England squad was to winning. Remember when those tight kits came out, where they were so tight you'd need somebody to help you take them off? I don't know if you remember when that came.
Yeah,
and I remember watching. Oh, really?
That came from Jason, yeah, because Jason kept getting scragged with his long jerseys, and he spoke to Clive Woodward about it and said, "Look, what's going on?" He was going through his video and he was watching the amount of times he was getting tackled, and it was by a collar, by a shirt, like he was getting through, but was getting pulled back. So he spoke to Clive, and Clive obviously then started to put the wheels in motion, I think, a little bit with Nike. And next thing you know, we're all wearing these tight jerseys.
Ah, all right. Well, not so great for the fatties up front, but okay. All right. I didn't know that. So, leadership from within. Jason Robinson, just being great at everything. A little bit of R&D as well.
Yeah.
But what I remember hearing was that it was so strict. In this video, Neil Back is talking about how you guys were allowed maybe 1 block of chocolate like every month or something. Is that true or not? I remember reading and watching that. Or how much?
It wasn't once a month, but certainly when you're in camp and you're staying in the hotel together, the lads used to look forward to Friday afternoons, chocolate time, because it was like this hotel made chocolate. It was amazing. People asking for the recipe all the time, and it was the only time you really got a treat through the week. So, and that's why the lads ate really well. They trained ridiculously hard, and they were in the best shape they could be because they knew they were on this pathway to greatness. Well, what they thought would have been greatness, and eventually was in 2003.
And you played with all these great players, and I hate to put you in this position. Let's take Johnny out of it, right? Who's the greatest and all round? I mean, for me, when I look at a great sportsman, like I'll say this. I always say to people, Thierry Henry is just the best talent player that I've ever seen in the Premier League. But if I had to start a team and pick the first player, I'd pick Roy Keane, because he's got everything. Not only does he have the world-class ability, but the personality is, I don't need to worry about the leadership, right? For you, who's the greatest player, holistically speaking, that you've ever played with?
Wow. Sheesh, that's a tough one.
I'm a big-time journalist.
Yeah. Do you know what? I don't know whether I want to. I don't know whether I want to inflate his ego anymore. But Scott Brits, he. Yeah. Do you know what? I think partly because he could do virtually everything very well. I mean, don't stick him at fly half. Don't ask him to do that. But like honestly, the things that Scholar could do as a hooker for me is one of the most incredible things. So somebody like that, or even Mako Vunipola as a prop forward, being able to do some of the things that he does, that's just the two guys that I look at and go, Jesus, they are very, very talented players.
Wow. Listen, I hope I didn't put you in a position where your friends list has just, you're just going to see Jason Robinson has unfriended you. Richard Hill has unfriended you. Johnny Wilkinson has unfriended you. Martin Johnson has Jason Leonard has just unfriended. So I hope that's not my fault. I'm not going to take it. I just put it out there as a big time journalist. I'm trying to be Parkinson. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that.
So Charlie, let's talk about performance. We've rattled off going from 20 nightclub Twickenham in 18 months. High performance. It's something that has taken over your life now. And what's it been like as a rugby player to retire? Because for so long, a lot of people may not understand, but you were a creature of habit, right? You knew 9 o'clock, training, maybe weight measurement, Tuesday, blah, 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 is that you became a creature of habit. What has it been like from transitioning as somebody who knew their schedule for 20 years, give or take, to becoming a citizen and then starting your business? So maybe you could talk me through the retirement phase and whether you struggled or not. And then let's talk about what you're doing in life now.
Okay. Where do I start? So I think just to give you some context, I think here in the UK, rugby is maybe third sport behind football and cricket. So it's not the kind of game where you can, unless certainly in my time, but unless you're probably one of the top two players in the world, if not certainly the country, can you retire? So you have to think about what next to your career and whether people have to retire through injury early or they come out the other side and they're kind of thinking, right, well, what next? And it is a difficult time. I retired 3 years ago now, and that transition is quite difficult, I must admit. And I'm sure any player that said they didn't struggle would be lying, because it's a change of identity. You go 1 minute from being known as Charlie the rugby player to just Charlie Hodgson, and obviously a husband and father to 5 brilliant kids. So things just change, and I think even my identity for people that know me change as well. So that in itself is difficult, because you're getting used to something where 1 minute people want to speak to you, the next minute people couldn't care less. And so not that that's a bad thing, but I think when you're so used to experiencing that, and then from a work point of view, you try and bring people up and say, look, I want to have a conversation, and it's like you get rejection after rejection after rejection again. Well, hold on a minute, this is a bit weird because I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of time of getting used to, I must admit. And I wonder whether you ever actually fully get over it, because you go from this unbelievable high every single weekend of doing something you love. I mean, I would have played rugby as a hobby, never mind getting paid for it. So I feel incredibly lucky that I had that career. So, and then you can't do that and you're not doing it anymore. It's like, well, what next? What fills that gap, fills that void? And it's really difficult. But you have to find a way. You have to find something to do, and find a job that's gonna keep you happy and obviously keep your mortgage paid.
And Charlie, do you think the structures are in place? Because, like you're saying, I mean, I've watched a few documentaries and read a little bit about like stand-up comedians say you could never replace the high of being on stage, which is why so many of them are depressive, because like you said, that glow of being you guys are gladiators. You are gladiators, and we worship you. And I speak for myself here. I don't speak for anybody else. I worship sportsmen. And once that goes, like you said, that identity, do you think there are enough structures in place to psychologically, or should we be creating better structures for rugby players to transition to say, okay, we're going to help you with your identity, Charlie the rugby player. You're just as valuable as Charlie the father, as Charlie the friend, as Charlie the citizen of England. Do you think we could maybe implement better structures to help players psychologically and mentally?
I certainly think what is happening now here in the UK, and I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but here in the UK, it is way better than it ever has been, because the number of cases of poor mental health is on the rise, not only in rugby, but just in general. People are more willing to open up and talk about it. So there's, I think you could always say there can be more that can be done. I think you're never going to be complacent and just be happy with what is, but there are structures here in the UK which allows people to, or supports players to come out and think about what next. But I think it doesn't necessarily take away that psychological impact of not doing what you loved. I mean, some people go and work in the city, and they work in London or in Manchester and Leeds, wherever it is, in Bristol. But it's not quite the same when you go into an office every day as it is to running out in front of a few thousand people every week. So that's the biggest shift. And I don't really know how you get over that other than just with time and letting things just pass and develop and moving on and finding interest in something else that's going to give you that enjoyment and give you some sort of excitement again.
Well, you certainly seem to have done that, Charlie, and I can't imagine it's easy. But you've opened Charlie Hodgson Performance. Why did you think of so tell us what it is and what it is that you're looking to achieve and the service you're offering to people.
So what I suppose loved doing as a player, I always enjoyed the coaching, mentoring side. But I also knew that I didn't want to become a full-time rugby coach when I retired. I knew that was not necessarily on the cards. So I thought, well, how can I use this coaching enjoyment and my experience and take that into a different world? And so I took into the business world. So, and using my experience and also the coach training that I've done since retiring to help people who struggle with the expectation and pressure that comes with life and comes with work. We live in a culture that is always on, can't escape technology, can't escape deadlines and pressure of all those sorts of things that are going on. So for me, it's about helping people overcome those so they can, in effect, find more happiness and find more energy and more success in what they're doing. And it's something that I love doing. I think a lot of my work so far has been one-to-one. Coronavirus has not helped that, so I'm now developing an online platform for people, an online coaching platform for people, because it's needed. And talked a little bit about mental health. The impact of when pressure and stress gets too much can be really, really debilitating. And so for me, being in a position to help others is something that I really enjoy doing.
Wow, and that's fantastic. And has the sort of business side that you've developed, is that something when you were as already thinking about it? Did somebody show you the way, or was it something that sort of you had an epiphany after rugby?
I didn't have a clue, actually. I was presented. Yeah, I mean, I suppose towards the back end of your career, you should start thinking about what you're going to do next. But back end of my career, I had twins and had 5 kids to look after, so they kind of took up all my time. So for me, I was presented with an opportunity at the end of my career at Saracens to stick around with them and do some scouting, recruitment, stay there and think about the next generation of player coming through. Unfortunately for me, it didn't really work out for a number of reasons. It wasn't really something that I wanted to pursue. But the coaching element was something that I always enjoyed doing. And that's why I've got into what I'm doing now. And I'm just learning still along the way. It's through naivety, through stubbornness, through making plenty of mistakes, to where I am right now. And I'll never stop learning, never stop developing, never stop growing, but I'll get there eventually.
Charlie Hodgson, I mean, you got to look after 5 kids, and I hope you found value in the family, because wow, 5 is, that's 5-a-side soccer team. So at least you've always got that. Is you put down the local indoor soccer, and you've got a team, and you can be the goalkeeper, and you're sorted for the next 15 to 20 years in that sense.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would be nice. Now, do you know what? I talked about coronavirus as well then. Just touching it briefly, that as much as work has been impacted with me, the opportunity to be at home with them has been incredible. And I think sometimes as a rugby player, you miss out on times with your family because you're away at the weekend playing, you miss out on weddings, etc. All this stuff. And actually now I've been at home and I'm with the kids and I'm seeing my wife, and these things that I hold dear to me that are great to have at the moment.
Well, that's amazing. And I think it's important that you were talking about that mental health. I wanted to save it until the end because having seen kind of the site and everything that you're aspiring to do, I wanted to ask you two questions that mentally were incredible for you to come back from. I was at the game, was it 2006, where you got injured against South Africa? I mean, I remember that at Twickenham, and I thought, oh, that does not look good. So that's one. And then the other is the British and Irish Lions. When you went with them, that is the famous one where O'Driscoll got tipped over, and that's all she wrote, because Daniel Carter and Tana Umanga from then on took over. So talk me through mentally. You had two World Cups that you missed because of injury. That must have been heartbreaking, right? Heartbreaking. How did you deal with that mentally? Because that is, I believe British and Irish Lions is the pinnacle of the sport, but Charlie, we can argue that another time. 2 World Cups that you missed. How did you feel, and who helped you get through that mentally?
I'm very matter of fact about that whole experience, actually. I think when it comes to playing international rugby, I don't think there's ever any guarantees that you're going to get picked or a guarantee that you're going to play. So even though the build up to the 2003 World Cup in the Six Nations of that year, when I picked up a knee injury, there wasn't really a part of me at that stage where I was like, do you know what, I'm missing out here. Of course, it's disappointing, but I was more disappointed with the fact I had this long-term injury to overcome. And I think the same happened in 2006. I remember the tackle, well, not the tackle in the end, because Jean de Villiers ran over me. And I did my cruciate in my other knee, and I had a lot longer to recover in time for that World Cup. And I was fit, but I wasn't selected. So, like I said, there are no guarantees that you're ever going to get picked for these things. And until you get your name on that list and you're there and you're experiencing it, then for me it was more about the disappointment of getting over injury, which happens all the time as a rugby player anyway. And I think you think about your next day, you think about your next week of how that's going to work with regards to rehab, and you just plug away and you get through it and you come out the other side and you get back on the field again. And for me, that was far more important to be back playing the game that I loved than missing out on those things like that. Of course, it's disappointing, but like I said, there was no guarantees.
Wow, what an incredibly matter of fact, and that's an inspirational way to look at it, because that's what you worked for your whole career, and you were able to surmise it, and you were so succinct with the way you've dealt with it. I find that absolutely admirable. Now,
I think maybe I reflect on that now, though. I think at the time, perhaps you're dragged in the emotion a little more. But I think now, when I look back and reflect, and I'm much older, and I see it for what it wasn't my time. It wasn't meant to be, and that's just the way it is.
Whew. Well, that's great. People struggle to move on, so kudos to you. The other one that I'd love to know before I let you, take some questions is the British and Irish Lions tour. When you saw the bod getting carried off against the All Blacks, and they had Carter, and they had Nanu, and they had the All Blacks, right? It was that team. What were your thoughts? Like, oh, O'Driscoll's gone.
Yeah, it was a real shocking moment for that tour, for that moment to happen. Sat in the crowd just with the rest of the squad in a little bit of disbelief, actually, and I'm not really sure the team on the field really recovered from that moment. It was very difficult to accept that this situation had happened, that he had been tipped onto his head, that he'd picked up this serious injury, and so I think there's a little bit of disbelief there across the whole squad, even across the supporters that were out there watching us. I guess I look at it as well. I think the problem for me actually was that it was in the press way too much afterwards, rather than sort of drawing a line underneath it. It became a side story that everybody had to think about all the time. That he was injured and this thing had happened, and can we get Umanga banned and all this kind of stuff. It became a distraction for me. And I think looking back, you kind of go, they could have dealt with it so much better. And as a playing group, the playing group should have been able to move on quickly, but I think they were held back by what was going on in the media, because it was also been spun internally, not necessarily externally by the press as well.
You see, we don't get to hear that type of thing, and because you did, for lack of a better term, the Lions fell apart there, and O'Driscoll's O'Driscoll. But if one man changes things like that, because they did, you came apart. I mean, from there, Umanga, maybe red card, okay, whatever, we can deal with it. But to unravel like that, because the second test, it was they were weight for thin.
Yeah, I mean that was the Dan Carter show, wasn't it? That second test. I mean, he just sprung alive, and one of the best individual performances that you'll see from any player. So I don't know whether it's down to the fact that Brian O'Driscoll was injured. You just have to look at the quality of the All Blacks that year and go, geez, they were very good. Like, they were a very, very good team. And as much as we had a good squad as a Lions, were we good enough to beat the All Blacks? I'm not sure.
It's a good point. Charlie, it is at this point that I should remind you that in 2007, we went on to win the World Cup with that All Black team in the tournament. So just a reminder, Daniel Rousseau on Mark Cueto and tipped his leg out. Just a reminder.
The try that should have been that wasn't. Yeah, is that what you're saying?
Well, are you talking about when Cueto's leg was out because Daniel Rousseau?
It wasn't out. It wasn't even out. It was a
do you mean when it was out? Because
it was a poor call from the TMO.
From the 1,000. All right, the TMO. Oh man, gotta love it. Yeah, just a reminder. Last year, the Springboks repeated it again. I don't know if you watched that rugby match. There were two teams playing in the World Cup final in Japan. Just your thoughts, your final thoughts on that, Mr. Hodgson. Two teams. I don't know who it was. I wasn't in Japan, but one team won. One team lost.
I've heard you talking already. I don't want to hear any more of you South Africans winning the World Cup again. I've had enough.
Oh, all right. Sorry, if you could just say it correctly. Us South Africans winning the World Cup for the third time. Just the sentence isn't complete. Oh, hey, please. No. We don't need that. No well done's needed. We've already done it, and we'll see you in 4 years again. Charlie, this has been incredible because I can't wait to actually engage more on the Charlie Hodgson performance. Just before we let you go, we're going to ask some questions. But how do people get a hold of you? And we will stick everything in the description on the video. But how can guys get a hold of Charlie Hodgson to get involved in Charlie Hodgson performance and see why this platform exists?
Yeah, well, the easiest way at the moment is charlie@charliehodgsonperformance.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. LinkedIn's probably the one I will use most. But as I said before, my online offering is currently being developed as I speak. So that should be up and running in the next, I'm hoping 2 or 3 weeks, but it's taking me a bit of time to get going. But yeah, it's something that I'm really excited about, really passionate about, helping others. So fingers crossed, if people are interested, then please do get in touch.
Super. And we'll make sure to have everything in the description. We will have all the details in the description, so not to worry there. Dave, what we got for Sales Sharks legend, Charlie Hodgson, in terms of questions? Jake Rademan says, what are your... All right. What are your thoughts on Eddie as a coach? For everybody who doesn't know, that Eddie is Eddie Jones.
What are my thoughts? So, firstly, I've never been coached by Eddie, so I can't comment in that sense. I've heard stories of him being quite aggressive with the players at times, but at the same time, it seems like he knows how to get the best out of his team. And you can put it down to some selection decisions here and there of the time, and people are always going to have different opinions of who should or who shouldn't play. But quite frankly, for me, from where the team was after the 2015 World Cup, when they had the same squad, he's just moved them on and he developed them, and they've developed this real hard edge that perhaps they didn't have initially under Stuart Lancaster. Stuart Lancaster did a great job in bringing through these young guys, but actually Eddie has just turned them into something much, much better. And I think over time, if that squad do stay together, I think they're still going to be a very, very strong team to beat.
I mean, they've got those two pit bulls at on the flanks, right? What's it, Underhill, and what's the other lad's name? Those. I mean, And they beat the All Blacks almost single-handedly. Great performance by those two youngsters, and both under 23.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some amazing talent coming through, so it'll be interesting to see what the squad is like in 2023.
Mark LaRue is saying, should South Africa move to the Northern Hemisphere instead of pursuing Super Rugby with New Zealand and Oz?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one as well. And I personally think it probably should happen. I think if anything, the season should probably move to a bit more of a global calendar anyway. I don't know how that happens because there are so many stakeholders involved, particularly here in the UK and in Europe. But I think to make that transition, and of course there are 2 South African teams in the Guinness Pro 14 at the moment, but if you can bring the rest up and make it this European / South African league, then I think that will strengthen what is already a very strong, looking at the European tournament, the European Cup. If you could strengthen that, I mean, that would be an incredible tournament to win.
I think it would be. That's very, very interesting. Doomy Eyes says, Charlie, how much did the rugby union game change over your career? And do you prefer the old or the new?
It changed physically. It changed athletically. It changed in analysis. I mean, it changed in every single way possible, actually. Do I prefer the old or the new? I'm not sure, actually. I don't think for me there never is another than a new. I think it's you adapt to what those circumstances are in front of you, and I think certainly defenses have become stronger now. So if you could go back and somehow open up the game but yet still have the same attacking intent that we have now, and create some more space on the field for people to attack and make it more attack focused, then the game starts to open up again. I don't know how that happens, but I guess that my worry, I suppose, is more about the physicality of the life, the career span of players and how long they last due to the physicality of the game. I think that's probably the more worrying thing. And if you're asking the question which you prefer, you'd have to say the old, because it wasn't as physical, it wasn't as athletic, and it wasn't as powerful as it is now.
It's interesting you say that. We had Professor Tucker here, and he was talking about some of the work they are doing at the very top at World Rugby in trying to avoid CTE through teaching players better technique and things. So they are looking at ways to circumvent that. But like you say, props are now, Marco Vunipola might as well be a winger, right? He is an electrifying figure, but he's also 130 kilograms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, very, very interesting. ZA Rover says, Charlie, which Springbok that you've played with or against do you think had the biggest on a game?
Oh, wow. Biggest impact on a game. I'm not sure, actually. I don't know how to answer that question. It's a tough one. I suppose I didn't have that many opportunities to play against South Africa, really. And I suppose I look at it from, I know you're talking about the greatest of all time, but Jean de Villiers at 12, I think for me, as a captain, as a leader of that team, when I played against him, for me he just had this hard edge about him that was, he seemed to inspire the rest of the team around him. And I think whether that had an impact on that one game that I played in, but actually just as a leader in general, as part of that team, I think for me is one of those players that you always, I'm sure you guys in South Africa cherish to have.
And your ex-roommate and a friend we share, Tim Cully, says, and this is a good question, Charlie, because now you got 5 kids. Are you now becoming that guy? Do you still have those dance moves? Says Tim Cully.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. I don't think I ever had them, to be honest. I pretended that I did, but actually it was just a load of rubbish. I definitely don't have them now. When I see my kids dancing on TikTok and I get involved in them, they immediately switch off and walk away. So it's obviously not doing any wonders anymore.
This is TikTok. I'm doing my TikTok moves. Don't know if you've seen his videos, Charlie. TikTok moves. Hey, Charlie Hodgson, you are amazing. And by the way, whether you like it or not, definitely somebody who I'd love to develop as a friend of the show, because you speak a lot of sense. You speak a lot of sense, and somebody who I think, once again, congratulations on transitioning from Charlie the rugby player to Charlie the father, and just a genuine man. It is awesome to see the career you've had, and I cannot wait to see you unveiling your statue, by the way, at the Sale Sharks. It would be an egregious crime on society at large if you don't have a statue before 2020 ends for everything you've done. Charlie, I cannot thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, father to a type 5-a-side soccer team, Charlie Hodgson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. You're a good man. Ladies and gentlemen, wow, what a guest. A genuine, I think, too humble to say it. I'm happy to say it. You don't set that many records. Availability is the greatest ability. We'll put all the details in the description. Ladies and gentlemen, for today, it's been a different ballgame.